Now, Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
A few logs in a river set ablaze on a summer night are now an iconic symbol of the quirky, artsy side of Providence. Since its first lighting 20 years ago, WaterFire has become a phenomenon, drawing thousands of people downtown on Saturday evenings and becoming a calling card for the Renaissance city. Each WaterFire is also a huge and expensive logistical challenge. This week on Executive Suite, we talk to the spark behind those famous lightings, the creator and executive artistic director of WaterFire Providence, Barnaby Evans. Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and perfect for a show we're taping in the summer, Barnaby Evans, talking about WaterFire. Thanks for being here, Barnaby.
Pleased to be here, Ted.
So I bet there's probably no one watching who hasn't either been to WaterFire or doesn't know of it, but what I think people might not know as much about is where the idea came from. We're now in 20 years, as I mentioned at the top,
absolutely.
Since the first lighting.
Absolutely.
Where did you get the idea for this?
You know, I watched the moving of the rivers and this effort by the city to completely transform itself. And I thought the design was great. I love the engagement of every part of the community to do it. We moved rivers, we moved the Northeast Railroad Corridor, we moved bridges, we moved bus stations. But I felt ultimately we needed something to program it. So I watched it open, and then people would tell me, well, it's dangerous, no one's down there, it's deserted. And after all that effort, I thought, gee, you know, if we programmed it and add an arts element and give it a soul, so to speak, people would come. And we experimented with it in 1994, and it's been history ever since. I wasn't sure how many people would come. And it's interesting now, 20 years later, which I didn't imagine we'd be here 20 years later doing this. A lot of our planning is what do we do with nearly 1 million people who come each year to WaterFire, bringing huge amounts to the economy and all sorts of things. So
that was my next question, actually. Have you been, looking back 20 years later, I doubt did you think it would become the big enterprise and iconic thing that it is today?
We did not. I suspected that people would be interested for a while, and then that, I wasn't sure whether people would return, but what we've landed on after 20 years of this is we keep adding all sorts of new things. So people tell me, well, I've seen WaterFire, but then they come down and they go, oh my goodness. I never imagined there were all these different things. So to keep it fresh, we're always adding new elements, we're always adding new collaborations, we're broadening the base of the sort of collaborations we do. So we work with ethnic groups from all over the community, we work with artist groups from all over the community, from classical opera to avant-garde, brand new compositions. We just featured the McCall Johnson Fellowship winner, C.D. Maiga, who's, he's had a beautiful performance on Steeple Street, new original material. And adding new things is what we're about, and growing and keeping that vital essence of what's exciting about Providence and Rhode Island alive. That's very important for a community, both internationally but also locally, that you've got that energy and spark.
And you're an artist. This is public art, and that was the inspiration for it when it started. It's now become, it's also a commerce, and it's a tourist attraction to many other things. But I was interested, I was reading some of the ways you've discussed it, and others have discussed the art of WaterFire. And Bob Burke, the restaurateur downtown, and he's not the only one, has compared it to a sacrament or a liturgy, like a mass, said it's so appropriate for such a Catholic city and state as Providence and Rhode Island. What do you see? Do you think it's a valid comparison? Do you see that symbolism there?
I understand their point there. Well, the way I would explain it is it's more civic ritual. And it's this sense of coming together as a community and building what sociologists call communitas, which is something larger than oneself, and really talking about aspiration and change and the future and the capacity to change, and just making Providence a destination. And in that sense, we want a place that everyone feels welcome, where everyone's included, and there's surprises, there's beauty, there's contemplative space, there's exciting space, there's everything from live performances to dances to unexpected pleasures to food. We want everyone to feel welcome, and we want it to be an event that when people come to Providence, and then they head off across the United States, they said, we went to Providence. And that is an amazing city. And that has tremendous value to the city.
And it's also, we're seeing the footage there from some of the lightings, and it's a very physical thing in an era where everything's digital, and I know people snap pictures on their phones all of WaterFire now, but it's a physical thing. You have flames, you have logs, you have the smell.
You're absolutely right. And we hadn't anticipated that 20 years ago. But as the world, there was a wonderful essay by a theorist called The Wiring and Waning of the World. And he said as we get more digital and more onto our online devices, that the world may fade away. That was his fear. And so it's very interesting to find how much people really value being with people in a public place in real time with all of your senses engaged. You hear it, you taste it, you feel it, you can see each other. There are all these little social interactions. I love how polite everyone is at WaterFire. You know, there's very little litter. People say, excuse me, thank you. And it's part of encouraging everyone to rise to their best behavior in a constructive way. And that's important for a community. And I think the huge crowds we have, this 1 million+ people who come, shows us how much people need this and value it and will travel to Providence to experience it.
You've also talked about, you did a TEDx talk a couple of years ago in Providence, and you talked about how, as someone who came out of the art world, and how you wanted it to be something egalitarian, something people, there's no sense for people that, oh, this isn't for me, this is this is for fancy artist people, you wanted it to be something they could tangibly.
Yeah, and two aspects of that. We wanted it that everyone felt they owned it and that it spoke to them in their own unique way. But we also wanted it to be very egalitarian in that there aren't big fancy seats that you pay a lot of tickets for, and we want it to incorporate freedom. So you can go anywhere. You can sit by the fires and listen to the music, you can go listen to the live music, you can dance at the WaterFire stage at the Turk's Head Plaza. All those things are free for you to edit into your night and script your night the way you want. And no one's got a better seat, no one's got fancy tickets where they got that. We do thank our sponsors, but we step them back from the edge and let the public have the best seats.
Now, when you did the first one, I'm wondering, what was the reaction from city officials, to get a permit or something to put fire in the water? I mean, how did they react? Was it hard to get the approvals?
We had to go through a whole series of agencies, and our concern for the environment is right there foremost among our goals. So we had to assure water quality and make sure that ash gets contained. And part of putting the fires on the water makes them safer because there's now this distance in between. And we just sat down patiently with DEM and CRMC and all these mostly state agencies and federal agencies. The most surprising one was the FCC, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority, had some concern because they said, you've got a string of orange lights that might be mistaken for a runway. And I said, well, with all those tall buildings in the middle of the city and it's on a curve, I think we're safe there. And they agreed, but I was surprised at the issue.
Hard to get your jumbo jet past the Superman building onto the river.
Yeah,
all right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk much more with Barnaby Evans about WaterFire and about the business of WaterFire and what it takes to put these lightings together on those Saturday nights all through the summer season. So stick with us on Executive Suite for much more from Barnaby Evans about WaterFire. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and very pleased this week to be joined by the creator of WaterFire, WaterFire Providence, the now very famous public art installation that brings so many people downtown, Barnaby Evans. And Barnaby, I want to sort of have you pull back the curtain a little for people on how a lighting actually happens. It is a big process. I've talked to folks who volunteer, and they say, oh, it's the scale of it and everything. Give me a sense of what that process is.
Well, for the preamble to that, I'll suggest somewhat like a magician. We really want people to be amazed by the image that night and almost have the impression that the sun sets and magically the fires burst into bloom and the music starts on cue and the torches arrive when they do. But it is behind the scenes, it is a very complicated process that takes about 1.5 years of planning and integration from city services to the police department to the tides to the hurricane barrier. It's astonishing how many people we need to get permission to work with. But the actual day, so let's say we've been planning for 1 year and the intense period of loading trucks and renting equipment and lining people up and determining the acts and doing rehearsals and all that sort of stuff is done. That day starts at 5 a.m. where our crew, we have a staff on a typical big WaterFire night, we have about 55 paid people there. Now my staff is only about 22 people, but there are all sorts of subcontractors and additional people who come in, people who are running sound systems and engineers and performers, from dance companies to sometimes we had the Philharmonic play twice, which was great. So all those people start, but our staff starts at 5 in the morning, and then at different tiers, people come in at 6, people come in at 7:30. We probably have 50 volunteers that show up at 8 a.m. to start. The equipment's rolling out by 5 a.m. We're setting up stages, closing streets, and putting power in places, turning off street lights, arranging for manhole covers to get power in places. detouring traffic. Usually by 8 a.m. we'll have the volunteer crew out on 5 or 6 boats that is out there building the fires, assembling them ready to be lit. Then they're out in the afternoon lighting, reloading for firewood and fuel, setting up sound systems, testing circuitry, setting up stages, planning for torch processions, different performers, different places. Then we give lunch to the volunteers, and then we have an afternoon session of a whole bunch of other volunteers who join the staff. My staff works from 5 in the morning till 4 in the morning, so it's a 23-hour day.
Wow.
We try to take a break in the middle, and if things are going well, we do, but if a rainstorm comes through or a big windstorm or some other unexpected shift, then we have to be flexible and move with it. Then for about an hour and a half before sunset, we will have 150 to 350 more volunteers who come in who all need to be trained, managed, figured out what their job is. Some of them are on the water, feeding the fires, or performers such as the fire dancers. Some of them are on stages. We'll have Festival Ballet coming in with a great performance this coming Saturday. Some of them are there doing public safety and sort of behind the scene, keeping an eye on things, cooperating with the police. Some of them are doing things like Starry Starry Night, or the World War II Memorial, or the World War Memorial, or working with the gargoyles who are there in Memorial Park. Many, many tasks, and then we do the evening, which could have several iterations of performances or stages or ballets or the dance events. And then usually around 11:30 we start to roll up sections of it. There's often receptions for our sponsors or special events we do with them. And then we go till about midnight in Water Place Basin, which because their residence is near there, and go till 12:30 and down in Memorial Park. And then spend the next three and a half hours cleaning up the litter, rolling everything up, taking the speakers, taking the power lines, breaking down the stages, because by dawn, when some of those early people want to get up and walk their dog, we want them to say, was that a dream? I saw 100,000 people here last night, and there were so many people from all over the world here, and there was music, and then we want them to go out and we want to find the park pristine. Yeah. And the Parks Department helps with us. Their workers are there during WaterFire and also in the morning, so that's the process.
How much does it cost to do WaterFire? Because you mentioned that you need sponsors, the cost
absolutely.
of insurance, and you need all the wood.
Boats.
And
we have a fleet of 22 boats. If anyone in Rhode Island, it's Ocean State, they own a boat, and boats require a lot of work: maintenance, insurance, painting, fixing the hull, fixing the engine, all that sort of stuff. Our budget's about $1.8 million a year, and we do about 15 to 16 events, so of different sizes. And much of that cost is it's not like a per event cost, but it's the cost of maintaining and harboring the fleet and repairing it and insuring it, building insurance policies. We have a great cooperative relationship with the Providence Police Department and the City of Providence, Fire Marshal and the state, DEM, but those require various services. We pay the city for about $35,000 in city services for police and fire marshals, and there's all these costs that people don't imagine of. We're a nonprofit, so we've got a board of directors, we have annual meetings, we have audits. We're being very careful about keeping track of all the numbers as any business would, tracking potential growth, seeking sponsors. There's a lot to it.
A lot to it. How difficult was it, or has it been, to sustain WaterFire, to get the revenue you need? I know there have been times you've said, we need a sponsor for lighting or something, especially when Rhode Island's economy has been so weak, because some of your core sponsors are businesses or companies that underwrite.
Yeah, WaterFire, the economic impact of WaterFire is fascinating. The federal government just did a study last year and a half or so ago when they were looking at the importance of dredging the river. And their recent study estimated that WaterFire brings $114 million into the Rhode Island economy every year. That is a huge economic generator and engine for the whole state economy. And that's just looking at the spending of those million visitors who come. That's not looking at the economic power and value, say, of attracting an entire convention here. So recently this year we had the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association here. That was a 5,000 person convention here for 5 or 6 days, and they chose Providence specifically because they wanted to have WaterFire as part of their celebration. and they loved it. And they came away from Providence talking about, we want that convention to come back here. And we've helped host and helped land many conventions in the town. So in that $114 million of income, that's not including things like the value of conventions. It's not including the branding value. I imagine when you go and you say you're from Providence in various places, people say, oh, that's where that fire on the water thing is. But that sense of making Providence known as an innovative, exciting destination city that you've got to make sure you stop on your way to the Cape or on your way to, northern New England, that's invaluable. Oh, actually, it's quite tangibly valuable. It's very valuable, and there once was a point where the Wall Street Journal that said that Providence was a smudge you passed on your way to Cape Cod. And one of our goals here is to absolutely brand Providence as an exciting, innovative place to move to visit, to set up your business here. And none of the value of that is in that $114 million as well. So that's part of it. Now, the way we do it, our events are all free. So we're not charging admission. We do get some support from the state of Rhode Island. This year it's $375,000, which is great. The sales tax from the $114 million spent brings $9 million into the state of Rhode Island. So that's a great business proposition. They give us $375,000, and we return $9 million each year. So that's, if you could get investments like that, you'd want in. So that's a good thing. We would love to stabilize those incomes because frankly, WaterFire needs to find a little bigger of a footprint. And as the new parks are developed in Providence, going downstream to this great new bridge where 195 is going to be, we see it as a great opportunity to activate another area and spread that crowd over more businesses and more people. But our sponsorship, we've had some very loyal, steady sponsors going on for a long time, for 20 years. Their sponsorship level is kind of at the same level. We have to, we established a relationship, and inflation has gone up or down. But we're very thankful for them, and it's it makes possible this remarkable renaissance of the city in many people's eyes.
All right, we're overdue for a break. When we come back, we're going to hear more from Barnaby Evans about WaterFire. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and my guest this week is the creator of WaterFire, Barnaby Evans. And Barnaby, we were talking before the break about raising money and keeping WaterFire sustainable. And of course, you are synonymous with WaterFire, but I assume at some point you will be ready to step away, hand it off to someone else. And there are always concerns with particularly nonprofits. Will they be sustainable when, especially a charismatic founder, steps back, or can it go on and on? So what's your feeling right now about the future and keeping WaterFire sustainable?
I think we've got a great future ahead of us. We've been working with a strong board on strategic planning for the future, and specifically, in this case, the metaphor is quite apt, of passing the torch, of making sure that we can build a solid, sustainable future for WaterFire. So we've had 20 years of success. Now we're constructively planning the next 20 years and figuring out how you broaden the artistic leadership, the community engagement. We have so many interesting things we've been exploring and so many more we'd like to do, and an incredibly powerful group of volunteers who I just want to thank, my staff and my volunteers. They work harder than anyone. What's that expression? Hardest working person in show business. 23 hours a day on Saturday. Not only is it a long day, it is complicated and involved work, and all of them put their heart and soul into it in a very real way, and we couldn't do it without them. More specifically, I couldn't do it without them, but I think they could do it without me. And that's the point I wanted to make, is that we want to build that transition so that we can have other artistic directors, and part of that is we've recently purchased a building which is right on Valley Street. It's an area that the city's focused on trying to get better engagement. It's sort of it's an area with not a lot going on, a little desolate. And we're right on Valley Street, and we want to make that sort of a headquarters for WaterFire's future, and as a resource where we can build more and more collaborations, find other ways to volunteers get involved with working with school children and high school kids, and also students in colleges, and a lot of other partnerships. For example, this coming Saturday, we're working with the Department of Health and the Rhode Island Foundation with Dr. Lynn Taylor, who's doing a program called Rhode Island Defeats Hepatitis C. And that's an interesting program to put into an arts group. And the reason why we're doing that is the arts gives you another venue to reach people in new ways. And that's what we want WaterFire to do, to get the messaging out for something like that, where we can impact public health in a constructive way, but maybe find someone who otherwise wouldn't have heard about. We'll be doing screening for people who want to be screened on Hep C, and moving the needle on things that build the community in a big way.
And you mentioned what's going on, working on West Broadway in that part of the city.
Yep.
And dovetails well with the question I wanted to ask you. State lawmakers, they're putting a $35 million arts and culture bond referendum question on the November ballot for voters to decide.
That's an important one, absolutely.
Yeah, and 10 organizations were specifically listed to get some funding if it's approved. WaterFire, one of them, $3.2 million. What would be your plan? What's your pitch to voters on why that would be a good investment?
Well, first of all, the arts and creativity and innovation is really what Rhode Island has always been about when Roger Williams first started, and Slater Mill, and I do think we've got a proud heritage of that we need to continue. And the arts are an important part of the quality of life and what makes Rhode Island so unique. And this bond issue, which has been led by House and Senate leadership and has been a great program, will benefit 10 arts, all nonprofits, with construction build out of their facilities to better plan for the future for growth for these organizations. And you know, I won't go over the whole list of them, but people know all of them. They're all over the state. In our case, that $3.2 million will go towards the renovation of this building to make it a facility where we can hold performances and do collaborations to create new works we can feature there. And I would encourage the voters to go out and vote for that proposition this November. It'll be important for the entire state and for the entire arts community.
And if it gets approved, what's your timeline to do that project, undertake that work?
Oh, we'll start right away.
Okay, so you'll be
There's
able
lots
to go.
going on. And one of the things we want to do is increase the footprint of WaterFire, add more activities, bring more arts activity in, and sort of maintain that vitality and that sense of Providence as a place where we want to be, that it's our home, we're proud of it, we all live here, and let's make a bright and brilliant future for us all.
And briefly, we only have about a minute left. What are you looking forward to in 2015 for WaterFire? I know you're already planning, right, the next season?
We just came off a meeting that's going to really surprise people. We have a lot of things. We just did, a few weeks ago, Bastille Day. And I know for Lafayette and Rochambeau, they lived in Providence and Rochambeau Street and Camp Street. And Herminet, the flagship that Rochambeau landed in Newport, is coming to visit next July. So we want to do stuff with Gaspé again. We want to do something with Rochambeau, with Bastille Day. Our Veterans Fires are coming along. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned.
All right, lots to look forward to. Barnaby Evans, thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope all of you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure you stick with us next week on Executive Suite. We're going to hear from a Rhode Islander named Steve Adler. You probably haven't heard of him, but his technology was crucial to the defeat of House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, and he's right here in Rhode Island, a technologist, so we're going to listen to him on that. Be sure to check out every other episode in Executive Suite. They're all on our website at WPRI.com, and WaterFire, of course, will be going on throughout the rest of the summer and into next year. I'll be back here next week on Executive Suite. Thanks for coming in.